This is the Your Career Story podcast, and you're listening to episode 63, 4 Ways Women Sell Themselves Short in the Job Search. Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jena, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. I'm your host, Jena, and I am so excited to have you here. Today's topic is all about the job search. So I know that a lot of you right now are thinking about the job search, are going through the job search, and I just felt like it was so important for me to talk a little bit about how women actually sell themselves short in the job search so that you can identify, am I selling myself short? I see this. I've worked with women in the Recruit the Employer program and other programs that I have as well. And it is just one of those things that drives me nuts because I wish women could see themselves the way that I see them and their capabilities. And so I was really excited to I had a really great time preparing for this episode because I feel like it's going to change the way that you think about yourself, the way that you think about yourself in your career. And you start actually identifying what am I good at and where am I selling myself short? Am I the one that's actually holding myself back? This may be a little controversial, but I believe that women are the ones that actually hold themselves back more than any man, boss, whatever, society. Then I believe that they hold themselves back more than anything else. I've seen this to be true in my own life. I see this to be true in my clients' lives. And so my hope is that in this conversation today, in this teaching, this workshop, that you really identify, are you holding yourself back? And then to get some actionable tips to move yourself through it. So the 4 things that I'm just going to give you a sneak preview of what we're going to be talking about. So the 4 things that we're going to be talking about is number one of the ways that women sell themselves short in the job search process is doubt, impostor syndrome, and inadequacy. So we're going to talk about all 3 of those things and how they pop up in the job search and how they're holding you back. Second is opting out. So women opt out of job descriptions or job opportunities because they don't feel like they're qualified and they go back to, doubt number 1. So that's another way that women sell themselves short in the job search. The third way is they position themselves as commodities. So this is one we're going to really dive into. I'm going to help you rethink about how you're branding yourself and why you are not able to command a higher price point and why you are really struggling to, apply for that higher role. And then number 4 is the fear of self-promotion. So we're going to talk through why that is a load of crap and how to get over it. So let's talk about number 1, doubt, imposter syndrome, and inadequacy. We've done another episode on imposter syndrome where I actually coached a woman through how to think about her own imposter syndrome, how to move through it, and how to feel successful in her career and how to constantly be shifting her mindset away from this fixed mindset to really a growth mindset where she's blasting through her limiting beliefs. But I, again, just want to repeat the thing that I said before. You have a higher likelihood of killing your career more than some male boss does. That is really hard to hear, but I feel like it needs to be said because you are probably holding yourself back more than somebody else not giving you opportunities. I've told this story before, but I once had somebody say to me drunkenly, I bet you got your job because you smile so nice. And while I could have listened to that and let that doubt creep in, I was like, maybe they did only hire me because I'm a female and I'm a diversity requirement. Or maybe they did only hire me and I'm not actually very good. If I let that gentleman actually frame the way I saw myself, I probably wouldn't be here today. So you need to identify who are the people that you have allowed to take up space in your brain rent free, and you need to kick them out, evict them. Because that doubt and that feeling of imposter syndrome and that feeling of inadequacy is only keeping you stuck in your job search process, or quite frankly, if you're in your career in general. So here are some examples of some things that you're thinking in your brain to identify, do I have doubt? Do I have imposter syndrome? Do I feel like I'm inadequate? Some things you might be saying to yourself are, I'm going to be caught, or they're going to figure me out that I am not actually good at this thing. Or, oh, they're totally going to fire me. They are going to fire me, so I'm going to operate and make decisions out of fear versus making decisions because I want to make the decision. Or they won't like me. Or that's a big one. The they won't like me piece. I so remember that feeling when I was in investment banking. I was so worried about what my colleagues were thinking of me. Or maybe I'm not as good as I think that I am. This is a really big one that comes up when people are writing their resume, where they're like, I'm not really that good. I shouldn't put that on there. That's inauthentic. It's actually not true. That's a little bit stretching. I'm not as good as I'm saying that I am here. And to that, another thing that you might be saying is, all those things on my resume, it was my team that helped me. Can I really take credit for that? So let me blast through that doubt that you have there. If you are in charge of a team, or if you're working on a team that contributed to some success of the organization, you are allowed to take credit for that. Now, you're not allowed to take full credit saying it was only you doing it. Obviously, that's a lie. But you're allowed to say that you participated on a team that helped drive XYZ results, or you contributed to XYZ project that produced XYZ results. Those things are totally appropriate. You are allowed to take credit for things that you helped spearhead, you helped take control of. And you know what? I have worked with men with their resumes, and I've worked with women for their resumes. And I love this about my men. Male clients are like, yeah, I was in charge of that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I'm really proud of that. And they have no qualms about feeling guilty about it. Where my lady clients will come to me and they'll say, I don't know if I can really take credit for that. And I'm saying, just take credit for it, please. Just take credit for it and own it. Because here's the deal. If you're not your own career advocate, no one else will be. So if you're having that narrative in your brain that all of those things in my resume, I'm not as good as I think that I am. My team was the one that helped me. Can I really take credit for that? You probably are living in doubt, and that's holding you back in your career search, in your job search. Another thing, a narrative that may be very secret, maybe behind a couple walls that you're not willing to address yet, but maybe you're secretly believing that you're a failure. Or maybe not so secretly. Secretly, not so secretly. This happens a lot if you are in between jobs. If you got laid off, probably due to COVID or some related thing, and even if it's not related to COVID, the feeling of I'm a failure is very common when people are in between jobs. Let me tell you right now, you are not a failure because you got laid off. That is not, it was not a fit anymore. It was not a fit. And the likelihood is typically you were probably feeling some angst anyways, 9 times out of 10, that you wanted to move on from that position. Most times. Not all the time, but most times. So even if you wanted to stay, that still doesn't mean you're a failure. It does not mean that you are a failure. And the last thing that for you to help identify, like, am I feeling these things? Do I say these things to myself on a regular basis is no one wants to hear what I have to say in this meeting. I see this with a lot of women where they want to speak up in a meeting, but they really are scared to. And so this also happens in interviewing. So when women maybe have something to say, but they're overanalyzing what they're saying because they don't want to come off wrong in the interview. And then they just get themselves all jumbled up and they don't show up authentically as themselves. Does that sound like you? It's okay if it does. So I know that this is a really, really common thing for women specifically, and men too, quite frankly. I'm sure you know of some men that probably sell themselves short in the job search process. If you are feeling any of these things, you may be the cause of your own problems right now in your job search, because that mindset, that belief structure that you have acquired is only keeping you hostage. It's holding you hostage and stuck because you are living in a fixed mindset. That you are not good enough, you are not capable, you're not as good as you think, you can't take responsibility for things you actually worked on, you're a failure. Those narratives are going to keep you from applying to jobs that you should be applying for. It's going to keep you from networking. It's because you're going to be fearful that you're a failure. It's going to keep you from applying for jobs that you actually deserve and keep you applying to jobs that you probably could have done 5 years ago. So I want you to really, really retrain your brain. This is what I talk with my women about when they come to me who don't think that they're very good, or they have this subconscious belief that they really need to prove themselves, or they constantly need to be striving and straining. You need to retrain your brain and rephrase each one of these things that you are doubting about yourself, about your inadequacy. It is totally normal to be like, I'm really not good at that thing, but I'm going to work to go try and get better, versus like, I'm so awful, no one's going to ever hire me. And We've all been there. right? So I think weaknesses are not a bad thing. Weaknesses are not something that you need to try and overcome. You can try and get better at them, but it doesn't mean that you're like this terrible, terrible employee. And even if you got laid off, it doesn't mean you're a terrible, terrible employee either. Those are not true statements because you have years of proof showing that you are a good employee. You are somebody that brings value to the table. So I want you to retrain your brain and I want you to stop diminishing your talents and capabilities. So I want you to really practice, and we talk about this in Recruit the Employer, practice the art of celebrating your work wins every week and just acknowledging and recognizing what you did well. We spend so much time acknowledging the things that we're not doing well and not doing perfectly that we completely miss all the things that we're actually doing that are really great, that are moving us forward. I'm guilty of this too as well from time to time. But you really need to stop diminishing your talents and capabilities and think, well, everybody else has that too. Or like, no, I'm not really that unique. Newsflash, you have DNA that's different than everybody else. You are naturally unique. By scientific, biological properties, you are unique. So science proves that. So I want you just to think about what are your talents? What are your capabilities? Stop diminishing them. I want you to practice stepping out of your comfort zone daily. This is not like a once in a month thing. This is not something that you do when you have to. This is something that I want you to practice stepping out of your comfort zone in your career and in your life. I think we have celebrated, I was talking to my fiance about this. I think our world, and we're seeing this come more and more with the pandemic, our world values comfort more than anything else. And we get a little uncomfortable and we don't know what to do. And so I want you to get mentally tough. I want you to step out of your comfort zone daily because you're going to realize rejection isn't that scary, failure isn't that scary, and probably really not that real, and that you are really going to be fine. You can make it through. It is the mindset that really makes the difference in the job search process more than any tips or tricks that I can give you. And once you start realizing that, you're going to be successful in the job search. So I want you to be successful. I don't want you to sell yourself short. So you need to work on these doubts and imposter syndromes and these things that you're thinking about yourself in your career that just are not true. They're not true. And if you're thinking to yourself, Jena, they are a little bit true, you know you need to do some work. All right, let's talk about number 2, opting out. So one of the ways women sell themselves short in the job search, you've probably heard the statistics that prove that women don't apply to as many jobs as men. I'm going to prove that to you today. So I was doing some research on this, and LinkedIn published a gender insight report in 2019 that I think is very relevant to today as well. Obviously, it's not that long ago. I'm going to read to you what they wrote. They said, research shows that in order to apply for a job, women feel they need to meet 100% of the criteria, while men usually apply after meeting about 60%. LinkedIn behavioral data backs this up. Women tend to screen themselves out of the conversation and end up applying to 20% fewer jobs than men. And women are 16% less likely to apply to a job than a man after viewing the job description. That is crazy talk. So, and I see this real time, like with my male clients, they're just much more confident to apply to jobs. They're like, we'll just wing it, because their worth is not, in some of them, this is maybe true, but for most men, I feel like their worth is not necessarily wrapped up of whether or not somebody thinks something about them. We're women, we are so in our heads. We're always worried about what the other person is thinking, and we're worried about how we're going to be perceived. And we have all of this gunk that's keeping us literally moving at a snail's pace. And that's part of the reason that I believe we are seeing a gender gap and a gender pay gap and all those different pieces. Now, that's a much more complex topic. Please don't send me hate mail on that. But I really, really do believe that you need to start identifying and stop going straight to the bottom of the job description of like what you don't have. I want you to instead look at a job description and think, I have all of these amazing qualities that would fit perfectly into this job. I can make them get to the results that they need to. It's okay if I don't have a ton of this experience. For myself, when I was applying to the Muse for a sales position and never having a sales background, I probably maybe had about 50% of the qualifications, actual qualifications. I had no B2B sales experience. I didn't have any sales experience. I had no on the phone training. I didn't know how to source anything. I didn't know how to build a market from the ground up, but I still got the job. So here's the deal. You can work your brain out of being that way, and you can start to apply for jobs that you are meeting less of the quote unquote requirements for. Switching jobs can be a very confusing process. Is now the right time? Is it too soon? How do you make sure you do it without burning bridges? What if there's a downturn in the economy? Is it still smart to explore new opportunities? While everybody's story is a bit different, there are some key red alarms that will help guide you as you discern if a career move makes sense for you. Sometimes you don't need to overthink a decision, but just decide to move forward. I've created a handy-dandy guide to help you discern if now is the right time to start looking elsewhere. Head on over to www.jenaviviano.com/change to snag my guide, 6 ways to know it's the right time to change jobs. In this guide, I'll walk you through how to understand your motivations for moving jobs, tips on how to start exploring a new move, examples of when not to move, and journal prompts to help you see where you're actually stuck. Again, head on over to www.jenaviviano.com/change to get your guide today and see if a job change is on the horizon for you. When you're done with the guide, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can't wait to hear what you figured out. All right, back to the episode. The other thing that I'm seeing, the other part of this report that I thought was really interesting is LinkedIn was actually encouraging companies to not just use their unicorn phrasing. So what I mean by that is like companies will typically like write the job description for the unicorn, for the one person who maybe has that qualifications and their dream scenario. And I understand why they do that. It's why you probably come up with your dream company to work for. But they were actually talking about how in order to get more women to apply, they are going to have to create less requirements so that women will actually apply for them. Where I'm like, women, let's just apply for the jobs and see what happens. What is the worst that you can lose? A little bit of time. Step into the ring. That's one uncomfortable thing that you can do today is to step into the ring and actually apply for something that you do not meet 100% of the criteria for. If you meet 60% of the criteria, apply to that job. Here's the other thing that I thought was interesting, that the other part of that conversation was saying that women end up applying to 20% fewer jobs than men, and they're 16% less likely to apply to a job after a man viewing the job description. So this is what I mean by saying that women, you are going to be your own worst advocate. You need to be your best advocate, but you have a higher likelihood of killing your career more than a man does. Like you have the capabilities to also overcome that. And I so believe that for the female population when it comes to their careers. You have what it takes. So what I do love is the other part of this study showed that women are actually more likely to get hired after they do apply. So what the heck are you waiting for? I think that was an amazing statistic that I found. It said 16% of women are more likely than men to get hired after applying to a job. And 18% are more likely than men to get hired after applying to more senior roles. So why are you are the only one that's keeping yourself stuck. So here's my suggestion. 20% of your jobs should be stretch goals. So 20% of those jobs should be jobs that you meet about 60% of the requirements for. At least 20%, at least. And I want you to stop going down to the requirements section. I really, really, truly mean that, because if you're just sinking into the requirements section, you are not reading what the job actually entails. And you're just trying to see, do I measure up? That's the question you're asking yourself. That's the wrong question to be asking. Because if you really believe that you're capable and you believe in yourself, you're not going to be asking that question, am I capable? Am I good enough? Because that's the subtext to the context, right? That doesn't even make sense, but you know what I mean? So I want you to really, really think about, where am I selling myself short? How many jobs have I applied to recently that should be stretch that I didn't apply for, right? I saw that job the other day and I didn't apply to it because I went down to the bottom and said I needed 10 years experience and I only have 8. Apply to the job. Please just apply to the job. If you need more tools on how to do this well, we are actually going to be launching a course in about a month. We're going to actually be launching Recruit the Employer, the course. So for those of you that haven't been able to get into Recruit the Employer, the coaching program, because it was too big of an investment for you time-wise and financially, and then also you weren't able to get in because we don't have any spots left until the fall, we are actually launching Recruit the Employer, the course, to make it more cost-effective for you and for you to get the tools and tactics to help you get from this stuck spot mentally and actually physically to an unstuck place where you're really excited about your job search, you're feeling really confident about yourself, and you know what an employer wants. So keep an eye out for that. We have that available for you. All right, number 3, the fourth, when thinking about 4 different ways that women sell themselves short in the job search, number 3 is women typically position themselves as commodities. And so what I want you to be doing is I want you to think about yourself as somebody who is in the job search process, almost like you yourself are your own company. So a way that a company may brand themselves, they may have certain characteristics. Like when you think of a Tiffany's versus thinking of a Walmart, it's going to have a different vibe, right? Or even a Walmart and a Target. It's a different set of value structure, different price points. Walmart is all about low cost, all about low cost. And so you're going to find only low cost items there. A Target is a little bit more elevated similar type of specialty retail or company. And so their brand is going to be a little bit higher price point. What women often do is they typically want to perceive themselves as the low cost option. The way that they present themselves in an elevator pitch, the way they present themselves in negotiation, the way that they present themselves in the workplace, you want them to feel you're making yourself feel like they're getting the best bang for their buck, which you can, but you can do that at a higher price point. Perfect example. I saw this, I posted this on LinkedIn, and I just thought this was the craziest thing. Tiffany's right now, talk about like higher price point. They have branded themselves that way. You know that it's a more premium product. They have a paperclip right now that is $1,500, $1,500, a paperclip. It's like a, I don't know, paperweight type of thing. $1,500. If Tiffany's can charge $1,500 for their paperclip, you can negotiate $10,000 to $20,000 more. Can we get in on agreement on that, right? You need to, the reason why Tiffany's can, I mean, obviously it's on their website. They're selling it. They're not going to have a merchandising mix that doesn't work, right? So they're selling this paperclip, a Tiffany's paperclip for $1,500. You need to be thinking about how can I elevate my brand so that I am like that, that I am seen as not just a commodity, but really as a luxury brand. And again, we go into this and Recruit the Employer, the course of how to do that. But you need to see yourself as unique. You are not a piece of coal. You are a diamond with the right amount of time and refinement, you get to sparkle, right? So like you are not a piece of coal that just gets thrown around, and you need to not treat yourself like that. And you need to not have a mindset like that. You need to have a mindset in your career that you are a diamond that with the right amount of time and attention and refinement that you get to sparkle. So when I saw the thing about Tiffany's, I said, oh, no. No woman should ever feel guilty about charging what she charges, quote unquote, for her salary or negotiating what she wants for her bonuses or whatever that looks like for you in this job search process. Do not position yourself as a commodity. I want you to invest in yourself. That's the other thing is like you need to work on your brand. That when I think a lot of women try to do the do-it-yourself route, get somebody to help you because here's the deal. You are not an expert at that one thing. You are an expert and you need somebody to help you come in and identify what are your gifts, what are your talents, to ask you the right questions. Hire somebody. You deserve that time and attention. And I think a lot of women don't think that they do in their career. And that's where it starts. Investing in yourself, investing in your education, investing in not just formal education, but other ways to educate yourself. There's a lot of books you can purchase. There's courses you can take. There's ways in which that you can work on yourself because that's going to help your career. Time and time again, personal development is the thing that's going to give you the highest return on investment. So position yourself as a luxury brand, not as a commodity. And that's going to be one way that you are going to stop selling yourselves short in the job search process. Hopefully that makes sense. I think a lot of people don't think about themselves as a brand, as a personal brand, and they just kind of, just think that I can do these tasks and like, won't you hire me because I can do these tasks? That's not very compelling for an employer. They want to know how you're going to solve their problems, how you're going to bring value to the table, and what makes you unique. That's ultimately subconsciously what they're thinking and caring about. So with this Tiffany's paperclip, you're providing, when you're purchasing that, Tiffany's is giving you their prestige. They're giving you an elevated experience. They are putting in a beautiful blue box. What are you doing? Think about this. What are you doing to provide that experience, that luxury? Maybe it's the way you follow up. Maybe it's in the way that your resume is presented. Maybe it's in the way that your LinkedIn's presented. Maybe it's the way that you communicate, or maybe you send a video after an email. It's all of those after an interview. It's all of those things that make up your brand. Think about what would a luxury brand do when going through the interview process, and how can I be that person? I think that's going to help you a lot. And the last way that women sell themselves short in the job search is this fear of self-promotion. So we've touched on, again, just to review, doubt, impostor syndrome, and inadequacy. That's the first way that women sell themselves short in the job search. The second way is opting themselves out, which we see is silly, because actually, if you did apply, you have a higher chance of getting into that role, statistically speaking. Number 3 is you need to learn how to position yourself as a luxury brand, not as a commodity. And finally, the way that women sell themselves short in the job process is this fear of self-promotion. So this pops up in a lot of different ways. And honestly, this could probably be its own podcast episode. But the way that I have seen this pop up for women is they don't ask for referrals. So if you are, looking to change jobs and you really want to work at an XYZ company, you're scared maybe to put yourself out there and ask your network to connect you because you feel like that feels a little squeamish to do that. Second thing is you don't want to come across as overconfident. So you don't promote yourself at all. Sound familiar? Your inner critic tells you that you are full of yourself, that you are bratty, that you should not be promoting yourself because you don't want to be perceived as a brat, and that you're just full of yourself. You don't deserve it. You want to be perceived as humble. While I am all for humility, I believe that there is a way to be humble and confident and be able to share what you are good at in a matter-of-fact way. I think a lot of people are waiting for somebody else to stand up for them and advocate for them to prove that they are capable. Sound familiar maybe? I know that for myself, when I was in a corporate life, I would, wait for my employer to tell me that I was eligible for a promotion versus being like, here's what I can bring to the table. Here's how I want to advocate for myself and see what happens. Doesn't mean that it works 100% of the time, but it means you actually stood up for yourself. So I don't think that you are overconfident by stating what your capabilities are and by clarifying how you can bring value. There is nothing too sleazy about that. And so you're going to have to reframe your mind again around how you think about self-promotion. I don't like calling it even self-promotion. I like unveiling your skills. That's a better phrase that I like because self-promotion does feel kind of like, terrible. I don't like that phrase. But unveiling your skills is truly what that's intended to be. Sharing your gifts, right? Goop, which I love Goop. I love Gwyneth Paltrow. Love to hate her, whatever you want to do, but I love her. And on Goop, there was an article that I was reading, and there was another coach named Tara Moore, and she calls it actually making your work visible instead of self-promotion, which I also like that description as well. So instead of self-promotion, calling it making your work visible. So I think this comes into play a lot in the job search process where you're spending so much time evaluating what you should be saying and how to say it, and you don't actually get around to accomplishing anything. I see this with women who are in interviews, and one of the questions is, how should I say this thing? I say, well, what's the answer to the question? It's so simple, right? Like, what's your answer to that? Well, I don't want to come across as too confident. And maybe I'm so worried about that if they find out that I actually didn't work on every single nook and cranny of that project, that they're not going to hire me. They're going to fire me later down the road. Like that is the cycle we go down into the drain. So I want you to elevate yourself out of that and realize, stop thinking about how you should say it or what you should be saying and just answer the question. You're not going to come across as overconfident. And quite frankly, having a little bit of overconfidence, if you're worried about being overconfident or arrogant, you probably don't have to worry about it, right? I think you can absolutely say, yes. So why I think you should hire me is because I'm going to be able to provide XYZ to your team. And I'm going to be able to be a great advocate for this team and making sure that the rest of the parties in the departments are going to understand what we have to bring, and then we can actually get a project accomplished. Let me tell you about an example of how I've done that. That is confident. That is self-promoting, quote unquote. It's basically just unveiling your skills or making your work visible. Because here's the deal. You may think that everybody knows what you're capable of doing by reading your resume, but you have to connect the dots for them. You need to be your own career advocate and share what your capabilities are, because no one's going to get it if you don't lay it out clearly. And so if you are fearing the self-promotion, it's going to keep you stuck and going to keep you quiet. And we do not want to keep you quiet in the job search process. And here's the other thing is you should start thinking about what you're leaving on the table for yourself, but also for others, for other women, for your daughters, for mentees, if you don't stand up for yourself. If you don't stand up for yourself, you are not paving the way for other people. And you're not, and that feels like a lot of pressure, and I don't intend that to sound like that, but you need to realize that you have the capability to change the trajectory of your career. You do not have to sit in the doubt and the insecurities and the what ifs, and you don't have to fear self-promotion, because self-promotion is really just making your work visible and making sure people understand who you are and what value you bring to the table. So I hopefully that was helpful, guys, and encouraging to think through. I want you to identify for yourself, maybe do some journaling of like, what are some ways that I'm selling myself short in the job search? I can guarantee probably if you're going through the job search, one, if not all four of these are popping up for you. And so you really need to do some journaling. You really need to be thinking about it. If you're thinking about making a change, maybe you're in a job right now and you're thinking, hey, I really am thinking about making a change, but I don't know if it's the right time to make a change. We actually have a freebie for you to decide if now is the right time. We have 6 ways to determine if it now is the right time for you. And you can actually find that at www.jenaviviano.com/change. And that's going to give you some insight. Is now the right time to change? And now you're going to be fully equipped listening to this podcast of if it is time to change, how can I avoid selling myself short? This was, again, a really fun episode for me, guys. As always, please, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, please make sure that you leave us a review. It helps other people find this podcast. Even if it's just a couple stars without even putting in the text, we so appreciate that. It helps us tell other women about this podcast. Again, this is my own version of, quote, self-promotion. And then finally, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you found something that was really interesting and helpful, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. All right, guys, I will see you next week. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, you know I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jenaviviano.com/resources. Super simple for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.